Functions are extremely important in C++. Here's a function. It's called, funny name, Dodo. And this is the function itself, and this is where we call the function. This is a very simple function, and when people see this, they say, well, I don't really see the point of a function. Why don't we just do that all in one go? So what I'm going to do is to show you some professional code, very nicely written, and see how that's set out. Here we have your main, but look here, we've got these things here which are called function names. What they do is call various functions. Sorry, that's the wrong area. They're what we call function prototypes. I'm going to teach you about prototypes later, but for the moment, there's our main, and there's the functions here, for example. There's one function, another function called crossover, for example. So what I'll do, I'll just go and try and find that if I can. I'll copy that and I'll do a Control F. This is just a text file. In C++, there are better ways of doing this, but I'll just see if I can find that crossover function. There it is. That's nice. This is your function from then on down, and it will say what it does. I've lost it. There it is. It'll say what it does, which is rather nice. You can say cross selects two parents for whatever that means. This is a program for genetic algorithms, and they're crossing over two chromosomes. But it doesn't matter about the basics of it. This is another function called elitist. Elitist stores the best member of the previous generation. So you see, you know what it does, and you can find out where it ends. If you look down here, you should find a return 0. That's return, and that's where the function finishes. And there's another one, void evaluate. It does this and that, and so this is another function. So if you can see where it's actually called from main, and then you can just have a series of these. Do this, do this, do this, and it makes your code a lot more readable when you compartmentalize it into functions. Let's try and write our own function, and I'll just take the code from my manual and see if I can just paste that in. Copy that and paste that into here, and let's see if that works. Build the solution, and you can see it's worked. I can tell by how long it was taking. And this is our function here, which is called Dodo. So it's a very small function. It absolutely does nothing, as you can see. This is our function here. We therefore call the function from here. Now notice that we've got here what we call a function prototype. This basically warns the compiler what's coming. You see, as you compile it and you go down here, the compiler comes down, 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 and it sees this. Oh my goodness, what's this? It says. Well, you've warned it already. You see what it is. So that's your prototype as well. Let me just run that and see if it works. Okay, it does work. It does absolutely nothing. Let me single step it. I'll put a breakpoint here and then run it to the breakpoint, and then I'm going to do an F11, and it jumps down to here. Now this thing void means that nothing is being passed. You can see that nothing is being passed here. I'm going to show you how to pass that in a moment. Pass a variable or pass a number. This void here is the return type. That means that nothing comes back. When you call the function, nothing comes back. I'm going to explain that in a bit more detail as well. So let's pass a numerical value as well. I'll stop the program and take the breakpoint off. What I'm going to do is pass a number. And if I'm going to do that, I have to put something to accept the number. Anything you like there. But you can see that it's complaining a bit up here, and that's because my prototype has been changed, and I need to do that to alter it. So I might as well actually print out the value of I as well. If I run that, then you can see that it prints out the value of 4, which is the value which was passed. What I'll do, I'll single step this, run it, and don't forget we press F11 to single step. So if I press F11, look at I, isn't that wonderful? I has been passed the value of 4, and then I can print out be careful here. When you come to C out, press F10, otherwise it will jump into the IO stream code. So I'll just press F10 and then F10, and you can see the value then is being printed out, and then I can safely do an F11 and it should return up to here and then finish off. You might like to try it as an exercise to try and pass. Oh, by the way, when you've got the prototype, you don't have to include the variable. As long as you're telling the compiler what's going on, it's going to be an integer coming up, please, then that's fine. What I would like you to do is to pass two variables, two numbers I should say, not variables. You pass two numbers into my function and print them out. Well, you could pause the video here and try it yourself. If you're coming back, this is how we do it. We're passing two variables, so we need to have two variables to accept int I and j, and we've printed out I. We might as well print out j as well. You notice that it corresponds, that this corresponds to this because it's first in line, and second in line is this one, will correspond to that. So they're sort of numerically ordered. You need to print out I and j. Well, it's not going to work. Can you see why? You can see why, but they haven't actually put in our prototype, altered our prototype. You could say int I, int j. You could just say int. That should be actually good enough. Let's try it. So that is worked. I'll just run it. 4 and 5. So you can see therefore how the 4 and 5 are passed. Let me put a breakpoint and I'll show you. You can run it to there. Now the 4 and the 5, if I press F11, it jumps down to my function and prints out, it accepts the 4 and this accepts the 5, and ultimately it will print out 4 and 5. If you could actually, instead of having a prototype, you could actually put the function towards the front up here, and then you don't actually need a prototype. That should build fine, because you're warning the compiler what's coming. It's not very conventional to do that. You might wonder why, because it saves you writing the prototype, but it's more conventional to put them where they down here. Right. Okay. What we want to do now is to pass a variable. I'm just going to pass a single variable, and we're going to pass what we call passing by value. I'll explain that. What we're going to do is to pass, we'll get rid of we'll get rid of this, and we could actually get rid of that, and we might want to increase the value of j inside our function, and then we want to just pass one variable to it, so the variable I'm going to pass is I. Now that means that I'll have to say what I is. Int I equals 4, for example, and pass I. Well, that's fine. Let's just try to build that. Failed. What have we got wrong here? Dodo does not take. Can you see the error? The error is that we've got this prototype. I should have altered that prototype as well, so I'll build it again, and it's succeeded, and then I'll run the program and it gives me the value of 5 in here. Now you might think this is a really silly question. Does the value of I change? Well, of course it doesn't. I has been passed off to j, and it's 4, and why on earth should I get changed? Well, there are circumstances where it does. What we've been talking about at the moment is passing by value. I'm going to talk about passing by reference. It's very simple to alter it to pass by reference, and we'll see what that means. I'm going to just put a ampersand for my prototype, and then I'm going to put the ampersand here, as well. Now that makes a big change to the program. I'm going to build that and then see what happens. Well, the result you will get will be just the same as we got before, because you're just printing out the value of j, no problem. But let me just single step this. Then we can F11, that passes the value of I, which obviously is 4, gets passed to j, which is 4. Then j gets incremented to 5, and then be careful, F10, it'll print out the value of j. No change there then. But let's see what happens if I now F11 again. It jumps back into here. My goodness gracious me. Look at that. I has been changed to 5. Well, that's what we call passing by reference, and you might say that's very dangerous, and it is. But thank goodness it's not the default situation. The default situation is when we don't have the ampersand, then it passes by value, and the original value of I doesn't get changed. But here it does. So when you include these ampersands, it means passing by reference. It means that the original value is going to get changed. That's not an easy concept to get your head around, because you'd expect, that's crazy. Why on earth should it change? But what's actually happening is that if you were to inspect the memory for our variable, which is say j, you would find if you looked at the variable I and you looked at the variable j, the memory location, and you can do that by your watch window, I've showed you how to do that, but if you look at each I and j, you'll find that they have got the same memory location. So if you pass by reference, they've got the same memory location. But if you pass by value, you'll find that the j has got one memory location and the I has got another memory location, and you're going to say, well, hey, that's pretty wasteful of memory, and indeed it is. But you see, if one changes, then the other one doesn't. This is passing by value. If one changes, the other one doesn't. But if you've got one and the same memory location, if one changes, then the other changes as well. So you see, we're passing by reference. That means that if one changes, then the other will change as well. So if you change it in here, it changes there, for goodness sake, as well. Well, you might say, well, that's a bit of a waste of time. I don't want my variables to get changed. Well, there is one. We can actually, I'll show you an example where you can use passing by reference to your advantage. Because we'll find that a function can only return one value, and passing by reference, I'll show you later, can be used to effectively pass, return two values. Another reason you might is that, remember I told you, if you use passing by reference, then you only use one memory location, and that is therefore useful for memory conservation. You don't use as much memory, is what I'm trying to say. Now, so you'll find that people use that quite a lot. They use passing by reference. I always used to wonder, why on earth are they passing by reference? Well, the reason was they're trying to save memory, making it more memory efficient. Let's consider now returning a value from a function. The main thing we need to look for is this here, which means return from the function dodo, in this case here. And notice here we've got an equals, k equals. That's very important when we're returning. Let me just build this for you and we can have a closer look. So if I just build this to make sure it's working. Right, now what I'll do, I will single step it. So I'll put a breakpoint here and run it. So what it's doing, it's taking the variable I, and now this has got nothing to do with passing by reference and passing by value. We're actually returning a value from the function here. So at the moment we call the function dodo here. Now I has obviously got the value of 4, k is sort of a random number at the moment, So what I'll do, I'll press F11. And you can see that the value of 4 has been passed to here. Now you can see that J has been increased. I've got to be careful here. F10. It should print out my value of J. There it is. The value is 5. It now continues. If I do now, look at this value here, which is, there you are, J is 5. Now J is being returned. This is the secret. J is 5 is being returned to here. Now we can't see that at the moment because I'm not in scope, but let me try it. If I do an F11, it's going to go up here. There it is. Now look at K is nothing at the moment, but if I press F11, it tells me K is 5. So K has actually been returned from here. Notice also my function, I had void here before, but because I'm actually returning something, I need to put int here. And notice I've got int in my prototype. I've changed my prototype to say that I'm actually returning an integer as well. And finally, I just print out the value of K. If I just carefully do this, I'll carefully press F10, and that will print out the value of K. You can see over here, which K has got the value of 5. So 5 has actually been returned from the function. Like I say, this has got nothing to do with passing by value or passing by reference. It's another technique for sending, well, it's a technique for sending stuff back to the function. But there is a shortcoming. You cannot return more than one value in a function. You can't say int here and have lots of stuff being sent back. You can only return one variable, which is indeed a shortcoming, but we will try and get around it.